One life-changing night, it was like a massive swirl of darkness filled me. Rage, mixed moods, rapid cycling, and visions of death filled me. It was unlike anything I had experienced before. It was so much worse. And so I'm reading from Med-Free Bipolar. It's an Amazon bestseller. So if you're just joining us and you can't stay for the whole thing, you can find this story in the book. But I actually had my publisher tell me not to put the story in the book. So you're hearing kind of like one of the juicy disclosures from the book. Rage, mixed moods, rapid cycling, and visions of death filled me. It was unlike anything I had experienced before. It was so much worse, and I wanted to throw myself out the window to stop the torture. I had never felt such extreme states before. I went upstairs to be alone, lest I hurt someone or something. The emotional and physical pain escalated and crescendoed. I stared in the mirror, but the eyes were not blue like mine. They were black and unfamiliar. I was scared. I grasped at every remedy I knew. I swallowed choline and inositol, sprayed lavender, and tried to do yoga poses on the floor I had learned at the YMCA before I stopped doing yoga because of the spiritual cord connected to it. I wanted something, anything, to relieve the torture going on in my head and body. I hit the button on the radio, but heard no music coming from it, only the screams in my head, followed by deafening silence. It felt like my ears were stopped up, like something was stabbing at my eardrums from the inside. Then something dark swam and swirled before my eyes, and the room went black. I could not see, and I thought I had gone blind instantly. Falling to my knees, I leaned forward into child's pose. I held my hands upright in front of my face, but nothing but blackness could be seen through my open eyes. I was blind and deaf. Bipolar had never felt like this before, even in my complete psychosis. Finally, exhausted, spent, desperate, and I don't know why, as I had not prayed in a very long time, I screamed, "God, Jesus, Jesus, help me, please." I do not know if I even meant it, least of all expected it to work. Instantly, the blackness dissipated just like it had come on. Black swirls exited my eyes, and I watched as they disappeared into the ceiling. All the pain and symptoms disappeared instantly. The swirls of rage, anger, hatred, physical suffering, and mixed episodes were gone. My eyes were working, seeing, and my ears unstopped. Immediately, I heard a song fill the room, clear and actually quite loud. The volume turned up high in my desperate attempt to hear the radio when I had turned it on. It was a song I had never heard before. I felt the words were directed into me, filling me as if the artist had written them just for this moment, just for me. Be still. There is a healer. His love is deeper than the sea. His mercy is unfailing. His arms a fortress for the weak. As the music played, I, or my spirit, and this is where I talk about if anyone's ever had an experience of traveling in the spirit, where you actually leave your room and disappear into another time and place, more than just like a astral dreaming or something, but where you really feel like the Holy Spirit picked you up and took you out of your body. I'd really like to hear your experience, because I've read a couple books recently. One is called Traveling in the Spirit, and one is Supernatural Transportation. And oh my gosh, it like totally explained what I'm about to read about. So if you've ever had an experience like that, please share it in text or reach out to me privately if you don't want to share. I've actually really been scared to share some of these experiences, and the Lord has really convicted me lately that fear is not from Him, that the enemy is trying to stop us from sharing these amazing experiences that we've had of witnessing Jesus alive and present in our lives. So, okay, anyway, back to the story. As the music played, I, or my spirit, was transported out of my bedroom and into a vision so real it felt like I could touch it, enveloping me 360 degrees. I was floating above a desert, panning in as if from a plane or as if I were flying. I saw a black tree in the distance, more like a dead stick standing up out of the cracked, spent land scorched along a dry riverbank. The roots were shriveled and gnarly, spilling over the bank before they died in desperate reach of water. As I got closer to the tree, I could feel its pain, knowing that it had once been beautiful but was now lost. I could relate to how it felt. However, the closer I got, the more detail began to emerge. The roots started moving, and the black trunk turned to birch white. Leaves started to appear on the branches, and life began to stir into the ground and air. At that moment, a flash flood of water raced through the riverbed, washing over the roots and covering them with living water. The thirsty tree drank, and I could feel its joy at coming back to life. I was standing at the foot of the tree now and was looking up. The hot, dry ground was spring lush, and the grass between my toes was softest velvet. Colors existed that I'd never seen before and enveloped me in warmth. But I was bitter standing there, hurt from my past religious upbringing and mental torments. Many times in the past when I had cried out to God for help, I had been met by nothing. How could a God who supposedly loves us cause such pain? I remember sarcastically thinking, what, is this stupid tree supposed to turn into a cross? It did not disappoint. With 2 branches outstretched from the trunk in cross-like fashion, but then the rest of the details of the tree filled in as it came back to life. A black and white familiar trunk came into detail. At the same moment, I gasped, realizing it was an aspen tree. I heard a voice, clear and sweet and familiar from years ago in my childhood, when he told me to hang on and say, I died just for you, Aspen. In that instant, I was back in my room, still on my knees in child's pose, but I could faintly hear the last echoes of that voice reverberating through the land and the distant canyons, going out to all who are lost, seeking them out and just asking them to believe and call upon his name when they have died inside. Jesus. Tears streamed down my face. Sorry. And the song picked up right where it had left off, although it seemed I had been gone in that desert oasis a long time. Be still, there is a river that flows from Calvary's tree, a fountain for the thirsty, your grace that washes over me. Let faith arise. Open my eyes. Let faith arise. You are faithful, God, forever. That's from Chris Tomlin's I Lift My Hands. It was the most real experience of my entire life, and the years have not diminished the memory in the slightest. So I share that because I've been speaking with some other people who've had experiences where they are traveling in the spirit, like the Lord is taking them out of where they are physically and bringing them to a place, whether it's inside of a vision or somewhere else. And this has happened recently again this year when I was actually out of town, and it can be quite scary because you think you're at home and then all of a sudden you're actually transported into a vision that the Holy Spirit takes you there and gives you. And this is actually talked about quite a bit in the Bible when they say I was in the Spirit or doing that. So I don't know if any of you guys have had an experience like that. I know it's kind of rare, but I have met lots of other people who have had experiences like that. And really, my point with sharing some of that was I really encourage you to go see a movie called The Case for Christ. It is not just all about, a religious movie. It's about an atheist and a scientist who set out to find some of the scientific proof for Christ. And so that's really written from, or that movie is a great movie if you have questions about why are people having visitations by this man called Jesus all these years later. I have met him personally in the supernatural many times. And I just really want to encourage, if you do not have a personal relationship with Jesus, to call out to him. If you are dealing with mental health issues that just don't fit the mold. I have quite a few stories of people who had some really supernatural stuff surrounding their mental illness, and they just can't explain it. So I talk a little bit about some of that. There's also a theory on is mental illness really mental illness, or is it the awakening of a healer or a seer or a shaman? And I really caution people to be careful with some of the supernatural things that you can mess around with. Taipan Pete asked, how do I get Jesus to show himself to me? Well, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. And so one of the best ways to get Jesus to show up is to call out to him and say, Jesus, I want to meet you. I want to know you. I understand that I am a sinner, and I want you to forgive my sins and come into my heart and become a believer in him. So there are many, many things who believe in Jesus, they believe he existed, but they don't have a personal relationship with him. And so you really, it's an absolute eternity-changing experience. And if you haven't asked Jesus into your heart to live and help abide and guide you, then that's really the main point of this life. And so yeah, so he says, sometimes I have real doubts if the homie Jesus